Amensol Shadow, In the Shadow of the Sun, Part 1. There comes a time in every man's life when he looks back on the things he has done and wonders, did he do it right? Does he have regrets? If he has done things different, could he have changed his fate, his lot in life? Or like some believe it doesn't matter what you do, your fate has already been written. I'll tell you, lad, they're all fools. The older gentleman sat back in his chair, and in doing so, the hood of his cloak slid forward on his head, further masking his already dark features. The lighting in the tavern was already limited at this late hour, but the young man had a feeling that he'd be draped in darkness, standing in high sun. I don't know how that answers any question, old man, the young man cut him off. He brought his arms up onto the table and interlocked his fingers, trying to make it up the ground that the old man gave up. The question was, why now? The older man brought a hand up to the table, playing with a coin, so not to be thought weak. He still leaned back in his chair. You see, boy, your lot in life has been cast from the moment you left your mother's womb. Your circumstances, ultimately your place in this world, was set for you. Call it fate, bad luck, happy chance, what have you. The old man brought his hand up and signaled for the barkeep to bring another round. Even in the midst of a philosophical discussion, he held a place in his heart for the aromatic elven ale served at this tavern on the outskirts of the human capital of Thronefast. And they served it warm, just like the elves liked it. He continued, the point is, whatever your lot, like it or not, you have no say. But that is not to say that your actions are not in your control, or that your actions cannot rise above your status. No, both parties are wrong because they are both short-sighted. A rat can be swallowed by a lion, and that's two beasts fulfilling their lot in life. But that lion chokes on this particular rat who latches on his gullet. The lion is killed. The rat killed a lion. It's a pretty amazing feat for such a lowly station. The young man looked around the room, seeming to be bored by the ramblings of an old man. Leaning forward, his frame appeared huge, the stocky physique of one who works in shipyards. It made him appear large, when in fact he was somewhat short for a human, barely taller than his petite mother. Look, whatever your name was, I realize you invited me here tonight, and frankly, I do have some questions. But I don't have time to hear endless yarns about the bad old days or your opinion of dwarven women. Kinda hot if you ask me, but well, I need you to hurry this along. A very faint smile escaped from the older man. He was slightly encouraged by the tenacity and wit, just not enough to merit a pass. His hand bolted forward, grabbed the pepper container on the table and flicked it at the younger gentleman, hit him directly in the throat, causing him to choke. It's a lot easier to listen if you're not speaking, he said as the young man coughed, trying to regain his breath. Luckily, the tavern was still busy enough that their ruckus went unnoticed. Now just be patient and your questions will be answered. I need to start over 40 years ago. It was the year 475 IH. Nerian Castigue was a young and ambitious scribe. He was still a young boy when the collision occurred, the unexplainable event that caused his world to be translocated to this new world of Terminus. This event, early on in his life, had left a thirst for answers as to why this had happened. He studied the history of Terminus from the elves who had arrived many years before the humans had come. He had later made acquaintances with the dwarves, who had shed additional light on the history of this new world and the mysterious event known as the Dragon Accord. So significant was the impact of this enigmatic event that the Tholan people of Ithilus had begun a new epoch of the world of Terminus based upon it by creating a new calendar coinciding with the signing of the Dragon Accord, year 0 of the Ithasbrun Hjelin, or IH, calendar. Nerian shuffled parchments back and forth looking for his test pages where he had written the characters down from the Dragon King Rocknell Thalmos's higher dragon tongue. The papers in the rented room at the inn were high and deep on the desk, product of a year's worth of work. Nerian's heart raced as minutes ticked by with no success. He began throwing entire stacks off the desk and onto the floor as he eliminated them. Nerian cursed under his breath. The innkeeper knocked on the door to Nerian's room, slid the week's bill underneath the door and into the room, immediately lost in the slurry of papers freshly residing on the floor. Scribe Castigue, I brought your bill should you find the time to balance your account today. the elderly elf said, standing out in the hallway. Narian, in a panic, stepped back. I'll pay up when I can finally have a moment's peace from these interruptions to my research. He turned back to the desk in front of him and slid an entire pile of papers onto the floor with a grunt. He began throwing one paper at a time behind him as his stress level increased until he exhausted every paper on that desk. He turned around wild-eyed. What have you done with it? He yelled, mostly to himself. He had grown more and more paranoid of enemies stealing his research as this last year had worn on. His panic made it hard to focus. But out the corner of his eye, he spotted the darker-toned sheepskin document he had been searching for, folded up by his bedside table. He sighed deeply, trying to catch his breath and slow his heart. He walked over and unfolded the parchment. This was it. A single character was written in the center of the page. No other markings were visible on either the front or the back. He looked around, folded it back up, and tucked it into his side coat pocket. He'd have his assistant come back for the rest of this. He didn't trust Callion with any of the important research, but he was useful nevertheless. One could not be too careful in these uncertain times. His trust in Callion and in his allegiance to this cause had waned over the last year. He did not grasp the ultimate gravity and importance of this work, so he kept up the charade of platitudes to keep Callion around for such times as these. He gathered a handful of additional parchments he had set aside and stuffed them in his knapsack. Downstairs, he threw a bag of coin on the counter along with a letter addressed to Callion. The innkeeper was at the counter and spoke up as Narian darted for the door. Shall I hold your room for you, scribe? He asked. I doubt you'll be alive in a week, let alone open. Be sure to give the letter to Callion when he returns. It's of utmost importance. Narian replied and blew through the door to the shadowed outdoors of the old wood. Night fell on the tavern in the woods as a lone rider trotted up to its entry. The rider, a tall and dark-featured elf, dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post, wasted no time, and entered the inn. Ah, Brother Callion, I hope all is well with you, the innkeeper said upon his entry. Aye, brother, and with you, Callion Greyborn responded. Has Mr. Castigue left, and do you know when he will be returning? The scribe has taken his leave, as mentioned, in his human way, and he will not be returning. But he did leave a post for you in his absence. He handed the letter over the counter with both hands and a nod, as was their custom. I'm grateful, Callion said, taking the letter and bowing back. He took the letter and retired to Narian's old room. The room appeared ransacked. He tried to think of the most valuable items of their research and began looking. In the span of a half an hour, he had gone through the whole room and had a pretty good idea of the missing documents, and they were very important to the work he and Narian were doing. The real question was, did Narian take them or was it someone else? And all of a sudden, he remembered the note from Narian in his pocket. He took out the hastily scribbled note and laid it down on the table and cracked the shutters for a little more light. KG, my closest confidant. Hope this letter finds you quickly as time is pressing. Word has arrived of the outcome of the meeting on the Isle of Vesu that you attended. The armies of the fallen Gento deity are pressing across the continent and are due to meet the forces of the elves at any moment. There was even an attempt on the lives of the leaders of the 6 races, I'm told. It's fortunate there was but one casualty of little importance. We must get these most important documents out of harm's way before war breaks out. You'll be able to find me in the cottage I described to you in the mountain pass north of Fairthale. I should be able to find some solitude and safety isolated high in the Roan Mountains. There's much still to compile from the research we have gathered, and test a run on you-know-what. I've taken the most valuable of the research with me. I hate to place this burden on you, but if you are able, please bring the rest of the documents with you when you come. I do not wish to impose upon you the sacrifice of this solitude when your people are at such great risk. I will continue to work as you tend to your responsibilities on the council. Hopefully, this will be over soon. Destroy the additional test materials when it is possible. I fear a watchful eye on our progress and what would happen if our work was happened upon by the enemy. Be safe, and I hope to see you soon. Your friend, NG, 475IH. Callion had no idea word of their trip had traveled so fast. He had landed back on the banks of the sea west of Fairthale just 3 short days ago. The speedy travel of rumors had been worrying him. Narian found out more about the power of the written word Dragon Tongue, and they were just beginning to find out how deep the rabbit hole went. His place on the Council of the Elves made it that much more difficult to conduct their research in secret, and he needed some separation from Narian anyway. Timing was fortuitous. Callion grabbed some sacks to begin loading research in a pack horse that had been brought at his request. As he began loading the horse with the goods, a diplomatic party rode into view on its way to Fairthale, the elven capital. Callion recognized the young man leading the party. He was an emissary for the king of the humans, and a good man. Aliston, it's good to see you. I trust you have been well and productive without your king these few weeks, Callion said, smiling and shaking hands warmly with his counterpart. Aliston jumped off his horse after the greeting and strolled into the inn with Callion. Elder, Aliston said, first, I would like to thank you for the incantation you taught me during our last meeting. It has helped me with the sickness of the horses we're getting. The news from the king's return will be much worse for our head husbandman, however. Her husband was the one who was killed protecting the king's son. I've known him my whole life, here on Terminus. He was the most sincere person and valiant fighter I'd ever known. He was only 20 years old. But this is not the main reason I need to speak with you. I know you have an intuition about things. Pardon me sounding boastful, but I seem to have similar intuition when something bad is coming. Some are downplaying the effects of the Gento's war with their own deity. I'm glad the council on Vesu Isle ended with the contingency plans for us, but I can't help shake a feeling this is only half the problem to come. Callion looked around and pulled Aliston into the room that Narian had been using. I know exactly how you feel, and no, it's not just you. I knew it, Aliston said. I need to tell you about something I've learned. There was a man who came in to visit the king months ago. He was looking for funding for a research project. King Amensol didn't care too much about the topic, but I felt like I needed to know more. And this project was to collect all the sources we could find with dragon language written on them. The man wanted to translate the dragon tongue to find out what the dragon accord said, if he could find more of it. He believed it to contain the answers for our race's most pressing question. How have we come to be here, and for what purpose? I have no reservations about the seriousness of the current crisis involving the Gentos, but this, councilman, this is power beyond worldly dominion. This is the power of celestial bodies. I'm afraid of where it may lead. Callion looked at him, amazed at the irony of the current situation. He broke his glance with Aliston and just looked around the room, trying to give Aliston a hint. What? You don't? Aliston followed Callion's eyes around the room. It was like a library where someone had left the window open during a storm. Books and papers were scattered all over the floor and across the desk by the window. He looked down at his feet and picked up a small parchment. Its title read, On the Effects of the High Dragon Tongue Carved into Stone. Aliston's eyes scanned the room a second time. This was all related to research on dragon tongue. Where? What? Aliston couldn't formulate thoughts in his mind, racing so fast, trying to catch up with his eyes. The man who came to you, Mr. Castigue, has been busy of late, and he has had some assistance from elves and dwarves. The major people of Terminus are waking up to the possibility of learning of their origins on Terminus, but not just that, Callion said as he leaned closer to Aliston and quieted his voice. They're also awakening to what power may come with this knowledge. Aliston broke from him and walked slowly around the room, reading titles of random parchments. Tense changes from dragon tongue to high dragon tongue. The magical properties of verbs and nouns. Experiment 24. Carving of the high dragon into mouse flesh. Aliston stopped and picked that one up and glanced through the 2 pages of notes. He looked up and stared back at Callion. Oh my, Aliston said with a shocked face. Oh my. The young man pushed away from the table, folding his arms and staring at the older one rambling on through tales of the past. He had to admit the stories were interesting, like tales from the bygone homeworld Vast Demeth. Interesting? Yes. Relevant? Older people rarely tell relevant tales, he thought. Look, the young man said, I am sure you and your war buddies just love regaling over the past, but you're boring me to death. You came to me with some pretty heavy information, and I responded, Not by asking if it were true, which I still doubt, but why you would wait until now to share this information. And I've sat here through 2 pints worth of your story, and you haven't come close to answering anything. So, thanks for the wasted evening, and don't follow me. The young man started to push his chair away when he heard a thump on the floor under the table. He tried to push back to see what it was, but his right leg was stuck. He looked under the table to see a long dagger, half a cubit at least, stuck into the floor, and the bow from his bootlace around the blade, pulled tight against the hilt. It had been thrown through the bow from under the table without looking. I have no problem with arrogance, the old man said, as long as you can back it up. He pulled his hand up, signaling the barkeep to bring another round. How about you just stay a little longer and let me finish answering your questions? The young man was still processing how he had thrown the knife like that, and recovered quickly enough to flash a bored face and bent down and remove the knife from the wooden floor. He tossed it up on the table and pulled his chair back close. I guess as long as you're buying, the young man said. Well, very well, if you insist, the old man retorted. Where was I? Ah, yes. So the Deicide War came and went with its own set of problems for everyone, and for a little while, most that knew of the secret research gave it little thought, caught up in the humdrum affairs of ensuring the survival of the world. Most, boy, but not all. The older rogue slammed his arm down on the table, palm up, pulled back the sleeve of his shirt. A large scar on his forearm made the pattern of some type of symbol, unknown to the young man. The rogue spoke a single word from a foreign tongue, clenched his fist. The scar on his arm slowly brought forth a red glow, like blowing on a dying coal. And then just as slowly it came to life, it slowly faded back. The old man smirked at the man across the table from him. Now that I have your attention, my name, as I said before, is Cole.